John, if you're done, Richard, do you want to go?
Sure. So I jotted down a couple of notes. I was never really a big AIM user. The big thing around here, when I was in high school, which is when everyone was getting into IM, at least around here, was MSN. Sean has accused me of being a Canadian, which is almost literally true. Apparently, Canadians use a lot of MSN, so that literally may be the case as to why our region, you know how social network effects develop these things, but everyone around here really used MSN. I didn't log into AIM until long after. I may have been a game committer before I even logged into AIM for the first time. So MSN was really my main protocol. That, of course, has been discontinued for some time now, as far as I know, or they folded into Skype or whatever. But, it was interesting when we were talking about the protocol wars and stuff earlier that MSN made a big marketing push that, hey, we're going to be open. And they actually wrote, I don't know that it was released as an RFC per se, but an RFC-like document that described the protocol. Now, of course, later they went back on that plan and it kind of closed off again. But it was interesting that they took a completely different approach, which I guess matches with the idea that they were trying to log into AIM at the time, which honestly I don't remember and never used AIM from the official client. So where I got into this was I had a coworker who had a variety of. Well, I should go back a little bit. There was a fork of game called Everybody. I don't know how many of you remember that, but that's actually what I used before I used Game.
I remember Everybody. I didn't know it was a fork. It's certainly possible. I don't know. I thought it was a separate client.
I'm pretty confident it is, or it was, but I think it's been long dead. But I wrote some code for that and then lost it in a tragic rm-rf incident with a variable that expanded to nothing. So I lost my user source tree. So I lost all my patches. None of that actually got upstreamed. And then later I ended up writing stuff for Game. And the way I got involved in that was I had a coworker who would sign on to all these different protocols, but from different computers. So I'd be talking to him on one device on ICQ, and then later on MSN on something else, and it was a pain to find previous conversations in the logs. So I kind of got interested in logging, which coincidentally, with my last name being Laager, I guess fits. But I wrote the contactization thing. So it was when you group them into a contact, if you right-click on that and view log, that you get all the logs for all the protocols. So that I think that was my first big thing. And then I got more into some of the logging code. We had the old log format that was the flat files, and then the individual files. And for the flat files, it was one of the complaints was they're slow to load. So I remember writing some indexing code for that. So that was pretty cool. And one of those stories that doesn't make any sense today, but I remember getting real performance gains by switching the memory allocator to the slice allocator for log objects, and not calling G new 0 or whatever it was, or I suppose G slice 0 or something, not zeroing the memory for each of these objects, provided a noticeable performance win in some scenarios. And I mean, can you imagine that today, with current CPUs? That I'm sure it just doesn't matter. And I too had a moment where I remember Sean saying to me, "Fix it yourself," and that's when he had given me the commit bit.
You guys are making it sound like I'm just lazy and I'm just giving people commit access just because I don't want to do stuff. You all deserved it.
Well, this was after you had, as I said, rigorously reviewed my patches, which may have been an outlier.
Right.
Well, in fairness, when you did it to me, Sean, you had just pulled an all-nighter. It was 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern, and I was nagging you about it. And I'm pretty sure you just wanted rid of me at that
point. I don't recall the specifics, but who knows? It could be.
So John, I feel like I remember you being the opposite of lazy. It was and I remember the same thing about Eric Warmenhoven is in the beginning, I feel like you guys were just always writing code at an amazing rate. I feel like it was kind of crazy. And then, at some point, like, we all sort of tapered off. Like, at some point, like, you got a job and then maybe stopped doing as much work. And then that's maybe when you started giving people commit access. But in the beginning, at least, I feel like you were like the opposite of lazy.
Okay. You mentioned everybody, and I guess we lost Mark Spencer. I think you would know. But if I remember right, the story was it's not actually a fork, but it was started by a very old school game developer. And they just kind of had like a little falling out. And I think Mark mentioned their kind of first little developer conference, which I'm trying to remember the names of the guys, but I can't remember right now.
It's funny that he mentioned that, because I have actually been trying to set something like that up for years now and gotten nowhere.
Well, like they called it like a developers conference, but it was really like, let's just meet up and like drink beer.
Okay.
Right?
And maybe
and
that's
so
the
this
problem.
one guy, what's that?
I said, maybe that's the problem. I'm like, yeah, we can go get some work done and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And she was like, let's just meet up and have some beers.
But if I remember the everybody story, one of the guys went actually expecting it to be like a proper developers conference and was upset that no one was taking it seriously. He's like, listen, I got all these great ideas that I think we should do. And the rest of them were like, I think it was Rob Flynn, was like, listen, you should go and take those ideas and just start your own like serious project. And he's like, and I even got the perfect name for like a client that does a lot of protocols. Everybody.
Oh, jeez.
And so I think Rob came up with the name and kind of gave it to this other guy. Because I think they kind of were going to do the multi-protocol stuff first.
Okay.
Back when the game was still just an AIM client. And then it was later that the kind of protocol plugins became a thing for a game.
Okay, well, I feel like we're just distracting you, so I'm going to go. But it's good to see everybody.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
All right,
Good to see you again, Mark.
Have nice lives. Nice lives.
Yep.
Good seeing you, Mark.
All right.
Bye.
Likewise. Have a good one.
You too.
All right.
So I guess my last big development thing that I remember doing, so obviously when we changed the name, the other big thing was finally finalizing the core UI split. So there had been, let's see, how do they like to pronounce it? AIM, the Mac client?
I believe that's it. Yeah, I reached out to them too, but yeah.
So they
pronounce it Adium.
Adium? Okay.
That's how they pronounce it.
Actually, it depends on the person.
Oh.
I actually had an in-depth conversation with Evan about that at one point. Everyone had their own preferred pronunciation.
It comes from Adam, is the guy who started the project. So he would call it Adium, but everyone else calls it Adium.
All right.
It's a GIF thing, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
right.
You know,
So
with
they
that GIF
used,
wrap.
they used lib game at the time, which then, when that got all formalized with 2.0, became lib purple. And I'm not taking any credit for any of that stuff. But one of the things that happened as a result of that is we decided to move all the preferences from .game to something else. And, wouldn't have mattered had it been .pidgin or .purple, but it ended up being .purple. And I specifically remember doing this marathon coding session that extended over a couple of days, where I was writing code to move your stuff from .game to .purple, and this is going to be deployed in the world systems. We had a lot of users at the time.
Oh yeah.
And we need to make sure that if this thing fails somewhere in there, so it was let me check the return from every stupid system call and do everything by the book. And I was really proud of that work later when it shipped and we didn't have massive complaints of you destroyed my settings directory. But it was very vivid in my mind because I was like doing all this coding from my then girlfriend, now wife's dorm room at college. So I'm like, she's like going to class, and I'm, I'd already graduated, had a job, but I'm like, I was gonna stay for the weekend or something, and just like working on this thing. It's like I'm just gonna stay where I'm at. I'm just gonna finish this thing before I go home. And it was, it was quite the marathon coding session. But like I said, I was personally very proud of that. That I wrote some code that got deployed on who knows how many people's machines that like mucked with their data, and I didn't like blow up the world. I don't know if I'll ever write code that's deployed in so many people's systems ever again, but you know, it was a nice engineering accomplishment. I thought. I mean, a small one, but so that was one of my vivid memories, was writing code to migrate things in a safe way.
Very nice.
Speaking of that, I actually remember somebody coming into the IRC channel that had not used any of our code since like 0.58 or something goofy like that, back when we were still using .gamerc, and they upgraded to Pidgin 2. Whatever, and it all migrated flawlessly.
Wow. I wasn't even aware of like the .gamerc thing.
Oh, that was way back. That was before everybody was a thing.
Oh, wow.
That's you just set a bad precedence for me, because I want to move that directory and I don't want to bring settings with.
You got to respect user data.
I know. Like, I just want to do like a one-time update thing, like run this external tool I can just delete later. Yeah, I know. We'll figure something out, but there's a long time before that's going to happen. So, all right. So I guess I'll go. So.